So, when you want to learn about a historical figure, you probably do what I do. You go online. But what do you really find? It's usually a jumble of facts, dates, and database entries, right? Today, we're going to try and piece together the real story of one of America's most influential authors, Harriet Beecher Stowe, using just the digital fragments she's left behind. Let's kick things off with a quote that's become a legend. When Harriet Beecher Stowe met President Abraham Lincoln in 1862, he supposedly said this to her. Now, historians go back and forth on whether he actually said it, but the fact that this story even exists, well, that tells you everything you need to know about the incredible impact of her work.
All right, so our search begins where most of our quests for knowledge do these days, online. But as you're about to see, trying to find the real Harriet Beecher Stowe in all that digital noise is a little trickier than you'd think.
Right off the bat, you hit a snag with something as simple as her name. A single search brings up all of these different variations, from data archives. She even used a male pseudonym, Christopher Crowfield, for some of her work. It's a small thing, sure, but it's our first clue as to how a person's identity can get fractured and confused online. And then you see how she's quantified. She's an IMDb entry, a Wikidata item, a Wikipedia page with a certain number of footnotes. She's just a writer. These are facts, of course, but it feels less like the story of a world-changing woman and more like an entry in a spreadsheet. So this brings us to the big question of our search, right? How do we get past all these data points and digital labels to find the actual human being? What shaped her? And what on earth drove her to write a book that would help ignite a nation? To answer that, you have to go back. You have to look at where she came from. Stowe's worldview wasn't formed in some quiet library. It was forged in the fire of the most intense, most dangerous moral and political debate of her time. This timeline really shows you just how personal this fight was for her. In 1832, her family moves to Cincinnati, putting her on the literal border of a slave state, Kentucky. She had a front row seat. Just 2 years later, she witnesses the Lane debates on slavery. We're talking 18 straight days of furious arguments that her own father actually tried to shut down. And then in 1837, it gets deadly. Her friend, an abolitionist printer named Elijah Lovejoy, is murdered by a pro-slavery mob. You see, this wasn't some abstract idea for her. It was real, it was violent, and it was happening right on her doorstep. Now, to really get her position, we have to understand the language of the time. The words abolitionist and anti-slavery, they sound kind of the same, but they weren't interchangeable at all. Abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison were seen as the radicals. They demanded an immediate, total end to slavery everywhere, calling it a deep moral sin. The anti-slavery movement was broader, often more focused on politically stopping slavery from spreading into new territories. And this is a really crucial piece of the puzzle. While history remembers her as this giant in the fight against slavery, sources show her position was specifically anti-slavery. She was absolutely against the institution, but she wasn't necessarily in that radical abolitionist camp that was demanding immediate, unconditional freedom. It's a key detail that often gets lost when we look back. And all of this, her experience, her proximity to the violence, her deeply held beliefs, it all culminated in the book that would make her famous forever, Uncle Tom's Cabin. In the novel itself, her words just cut right to the bone. With this line, she's arguing that it doesn't matter how nice a master might be. The system itself is fundamentally broken. Why? Because it reduces people to property, to things. It's a brilliant legal argument wrapped up in an absolutely undeniable moral one. And believe me, she did not shy away from the brutal reality. This line is just chilling. She's describing how cruelty becomes like a drug, requiring bigger and bigger doses to have any effect. This is the kind of writing that shocked the conscience of a nation. But the legacy of her work got complicated, almost immediately. Her goal with the novel was to create a living dramatic reality of slavery's injustice, to make people feel the human cost. But then came the stage plays, and these were seen by way more people than ever read the book. They often twisted her work into these racist caricatures, described as half a minstrel show and half a circus. It's like they took her powerful message and just completely threw it out the window. But to think of Harriet Beecher Stowe as only the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, well, you'd be missing so much of the person we're trying to find. She was far, far from a one-hit wonder. I mean, look at this. She was an incredibly prolific author. She wrote a nonfiction follow-up to Uncle Tom's Cabin that was packed with her real-world sources. She wrote other anti-slavery novels, historical fiction, and tons of works on religion and domestic life. Her career was long and covered a huge range of topics. And for a real glimpse of the person behind the famous name, you have got to hear this. This isn't about slavery or theology. This is Harriet Beecher Stowe writing about her cat, Calvin. The level of detail, the affection, a shade of quiet Maltese, fastidiously neat. This is a writer who saw the entire world with incredible precision and warmth. It's a small, humanizing fragment that you're definitely not going to find on a typical biography page. So, as we bring our journey to a close, let's look at how she's remembered today and come back to our original question about finding the real person in the digital world. Officially, her legacy is secure. She's in multiple halls of fame. She's on a postage stamp. This is the version of her story you'll find easily online. Her place in American history is undeniable, celebrated in all the ways we officially remember our great figures. But this brings us to the final, crucial twist in our search. The Beecher family collection at Princeton holds a massive trove of her life: letters, journals, family papers. And if you look up the archive's description, it states very clearly, collection not digitally available. This is the analog ghost in the digital machine. A huge part of her story exists only on paper, in a library, accessible only to people who can physically go there. And this really reveals the true limit of our digital world. We've managed to piece together a pretty compelling story of Harriet Beecher Stowe from the online fragments, but her complete story, like so many others, isn't fully there. It leaves us with a provocative final question. What other crucial histories are still sitting out there in a box, on a shelf, just waiting to be discovered beyond our screens?